All right, Dr. Emmanuela, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Maheen, for having me.
It's such a
Excited to be
pleasure
here.
to spend some time talking to you. We haven't talked in a long time, and I'm really excited to hear about what you have going on. It's exciting. I kind of, since I've worked with you in the past, I looked up your profile and saw what is she up to, because I know she's up to something cool, and lo and behold, it's you're up to a lot, and speaking and consulting and all that stuff. So I think we just dive right in. Honestly, I think this
Yeah,
it'd be great. So
I'm ready.
tell me a little bit of like, I don't know, just like start with like a kind of like an intro bio. I can put your bio on the screens, kind of just to for whoever's watching this to kind of get an idea of your about profile from your website.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share and to be here too. I'm super excited to chat with you today. And I'm glad to share a little bit about myself because sometimes when you read those bios, they're, you know, kind
They're
of
free.
flat,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So they don't give the full picture of who like folks are. And so like if I was to share a little bit about myself, I'm Dr. Emmanuela, as you shared. I have a interesting background, which I know we'll dig into a little bit. Part of my story is really tied to my parents who were immigrants to the United States. They came from Haiti, and because of them coming into this new space, um, not knowing the language, the culture, the way to move around the world, that really instilled something in me where I felt like if I needed to do something, I need to figure it out on my own. Not because they didn't want to help me, but there were times where they couldn't, and they held down multiple jobs and that sort of thing, and were very into education. They felt like education was the key to everything, and so with that kind of set the stage for me to go into higher education. I ended up having a little over 15 years in higher education, mostly in the career services space, leading career services at large research one institutions, working specifically with Fortune 100 companies, helping recruiters to recruit diverse talent, and helping them to have a good brand on campus to kind of feed into those hiring tactics that they used. And, we worked closely together with some of those things. And then most recently, I completed my doctorate in higher education, and I really studied the experiences of second generation Caribbean women. So these are people like myself who were born in the US, but their parents were born in the Caribbean, and how they make meaning of their race, ethnicity, and gender within the context of uh, Hispanic serving institution, which is where I worked before. And so that kind of uh, tied into my whole interest in diversity, equity, belonging kinds of work. And so I consult, I help organizations in a number of ways, whether it's to recruit diverse talent or creating curriculum to kind of reach diverse populations. I also coach women of color graduate students and help them to feel confident about the degree that they decided to pursue, and also seeing how they can connect their values to the career that they desire. I've also written a lot of different things, whether they're books, contributing to different books, as well as research, peer-reviewed articles, and I also have a podcast, so I do a lot. So
yeah.
that's just a little bit.
It sounds like that's a full plate. That's a full plate, and I truly admire that, because I think some of our values in that sense align, and some differences, but like again, my parents were immigrants too, so I definitely navigated through, having to understand where they were coming from, the way they did their work and their life back home versus what this country provides, and like how to integrate yourself into the workplace here, and how to make sure that all the systems around you are well, well taken care of, and that type of thing.
Mhm.
So it is tough. It is tough for immigrants like us, and first generation immigrants are, it's a whole transition. It's a whole learning curve, all that stuff. And the other thing is, and as you well know, I'm also passionate about helping people develop their career. I did
Mhm.
it as an extracurricular activity for a previous employer, and that's where we connected, because
Yeah.
we worked together on recruiting, and that employer actually had a diversity section. So like we were recruiting with your institution to
Mhm.
for diversity, for diverse engineering and that type of thing. So that was a pleasure to do. It was one of my favorite things to do year round for my job. That it wasn't my actual job, but I did it for
Yeah.
fun, and I'll continue to do it. I'll continue to do it, and I think we can definitely align on that for a long time. So
Yeah.
yes,
Totally.
so that's awesome. Yeah, no, and that's one thing I've been thinking about since I've started my company, you've started your company, and you're consulting, working with also big companies. And so one thing, for example, one of the questions I had for you is, through the higher education, through your experience of 15 years working with universities and that type of thing, how has that, working with the students, how's that shaped your perspective on diversity and inclusion? Because sometimes it's kind of vague to understand that having diversity in a group of, in a working group, also, it really does add value to your company and to your team. But how have you seen it develop through your perspective as higher education?
Yeah, it's funny. I love this question because, like you said, we met with your previous company, right? And there was a need for diversity. And when we're talking about this, your previous company, we're talking about 2013 was like the start of them coming and saying that diversity is important to us, and diversity of different things, right? Whether it's diversity in thought, diversity in identity, whether you're a woman, you're a woman of color, non binary, all of those kinds of things play into that. So I say that to say that that was great at that time, right? And then if folks think back to like rewind to 2020, the summer of 2020, if you remember, with things that started off with the Black Square, and I think it was all tied with music and making sure that folks were aware of what was going on there. But then George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, and all types of other things going on too. Ahmad, oh my gosh, I can't remember his last name. Arbery, I want to say, Breonna Taylor, all of these things were happening. Folks were marching, uh, demanding for things to be changed, right? And a lot of companies decided that, hey, we need to do something, right? Whatever that might be. And so we've seen the shift of how companies are viewing it. And I want to say a lot of times we have to appeal to the bottom line, right? Because if you don't have diverse folks in the room, you do miss out on potential opportunities to connect with communities that you want to uh, buy your product, right? So,
Yeah, of course. It's funny
right?
you use the word need.
Hmm.
That these companies express the need to add diversity to their. It's not a, hey, it would be nice to have. It's a need, because if you want to compete in the workplace, and as a service or a product, or selling a product or whatever it is, you need the perspective from different people to be able to target different demographics, different regions, different genders, whatever it is. You need that. It's a need, not a nice to have.
Exactly. But you know what's so funny? A lot of companies don't feel like there's a need, right? Things are fine the way that it is. But guess what? The population is changing. We have Gen Zs who are requiring different things. We have a changing demographic where it's becoming more diverse, right? And so because of that, you need to be aware of what's going on, right? I remember speaking to a company who makes cars, and they were really trying to get into the market of like women Hispanics, right? And it's like, how do you make sure that you're appealing to all of the needs of Hispanic women or Latinx women
Right.
if there's no one at the table that are designing these cars that are thinking about the needs of Latinx women, right? And so, a lot of times we do have to kind of bring it, down to the numbers so that we can appeal to those companies. So that's one way that, we are trying to do that. The other thing that I can think of for sure is there's a shift now, right? Especially in Florida. I'm here in Florida. There's a shift where populations of folks are threatened by diversity work. They're threatened by it in a lot of ways. And so we are still fighting for folks to see the importance of diversity, to not see it as a way of keeping people out. No, it's really expanding who we're serving, who we're talking about, how folks can see themselves so that everyone feels included, but not necessarily doing it at the expense of other folks where they'll feel like they don't see themselves.
Right. Yeah, no, it is. It's important. I've lived it in my world. I'm an engineer, as you know, and I haven't, I was part of a lot of the women conferences and women discussion panels to try to motivate women and young girls to become engineers, because you don't see a lot of that. And I think there's something innate in that. It's kind of a different discussion, but I think it's innate for men, for males to like working on things in cars. So eventually, they go into engineering fields, and women go into more people related fields. I do believe in that. That's a whole nother psychological discussion,
Yeah.
but I do think that, I have worked with amazing women engineers, and a lot of them, and they're amazing, and they provide so much value, and it just brings like another kind of great vibe to the workplace that kind of encompasses all of us. And I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to explain when you really have, all types of people working with you, and it's pleasant. It makes it more of a pleasant workplace. It makes it more of a complete, it kind of represents, the society as a whole when you're working, when you have someone from everywhere working with you. So I love it. It's something that I've really treasured through the years, and I've really pushed for girls to become engineers. And it's tough. You have to work at it. You have to educate, girls on what does an engineer do day to day. They don't just work on cars. There's a lot of things in quality and branding and everything it requires an engineering mindset. And then when you go into it, you provide an immense amount of value just because you grew up as a woman, or as an African American, or as a Hispanic, whatever it is. And it's very interesting. And one thing I was just thinking about while you were talking is kind of transitioning a little bit to entrepreneurship, right? Because we're both entrepreneurs right now, and we're trying to grow our business. And I'm sure a lot of people that might be listening, they're also at different levels of growing their business. At what point do you start integrating diversity into your business? Is it just, when you become a big corporation that you have a lot of eyes on you, and you have to now, make it seem like you're recruiting a lot of different diverse people? Or is it right off the bat? I mean, at what point do you say, okay, now I have to actually worry about diversity? Because as you know, when you're starting a business, there's a lot to do, right? A lot of administrative work, a lot of growing, a lot of marketing, a lot of networking, and maybe diversity kind of gets thrown in the back burner for a little bit until you kind of have the time to think about, how can I integrate diversity into my business? But how do you kind of integrate that early on? Yeah. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question for sure. And, I don't know if I have all the answers, right? Because I think that because I'm a Black woman, right? I identify as a Black woman. Like I said, I'm a child of immigrants. I think that there's no way that I can separate how diversity shows up in my business, right? Just because it's all around me, it's who I am, right? And so I think for someone who doesn't feel like they have those identities, it might be a little harder to actually see that maybe you may not be operating in a DEI kind of way. And so I would say if that is you, research, right? We have the great, what is it, YouTube University, we have Google, we have books that you can read. I would definitely recommend expanding what you read. If you like, I'll give an example. I read a lot of business books, and a lot of business books are written by white men. And that's not a knock to whatever, but what I would definitely suggest is like, how do you diversify what you're reading? Like, who's writing books? Pick up a book, a business book that's written by an Asian or written by a Black person, right? There is so much that we can learn from folks. And, again, too, not to say that white men can't teach us anything. Like, there's a lot that we can learn from everyone. But these little things are little tweaks that you can do that can help you to like start to expand the way that you think. Because when you read books written by other people, they use different examples that perhaps you may not have been familiar with, especially from their background. They're using different types of frameworks like intersectionality, which is a framework that was brought about. Say it again.
That's an interesting term. I'm writing it down.
Yeah. Intersectionality is a framework that was really kind of pioneered by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is an attorney and professor. And basically what she did, and I'm not even going to do this any justice, so definitely Google this, but what she did was she found that there were specific laws that kind of erased Black women and didn't apply to them. Like, for example, if there was a law on the books that was looking at, I'll give this example. So like, say in the early 1920s, there was the Voting Act that was put out so that women can vote. When that was kind of put out, that didn't include Black women. So, right. So it just only included women. White women, and not Black women, right? Or Hispanic women or whatever. And so when you see some of these things come forward, they're excluding certain groups. And intersectionality is a way that you can look at different things that can explain what's happening, right? So you have a Black woman where this law is in place, but because she's Black, she doesn't get the right to vote until the Civil Rights Voting Act is passed in the 1960s, right? And so that's so crazy how that happens, but folks don't really realize how certain things kind of compound on top of each other and help certain people and not others, or punish certain folks or affect them in different ways than others.
And I think that's a great way to think about it, like for solopreneurs, right? Like, it's just you're out there, you're selling, you're speaking, you're doing everything. It's like, well, I can't do diversity in my business because, I'm not hiring a whole bunch of people. So I'm not going to diversify, the people I'm hiring, but you can read different books and you can integrate diversity into your one-man band just by getting perspectives and like cultural perspectives on different examples and different authors. So I think that's a great, I guess, conclusion to that question is like, how do you integrate it early on? Well, you can integrate diversity right off the bat.
Exactly.
By diversifying what you read, by diversifying what you hear, what you see, the people you speak to, the
Exactly.
people you network with. I mean, it's all around us. And
I was just going to say that the networking piece, expanding, especially when you talk about solopreneur, right? I'm a solopreneur. I just recently hired a virtual assistant for the first time.
nice.
And so, building out the team to support me in the things that, I want to do. But, oh, wow, lost my train of thought there. But with that, as a solopreneur, you get stuck like in your ways, and sometimes it's very lonely too. So like, who do you surround yourself with? And if you don't see things that already exist, creating what you want, creating that community and creating a diverse group of folks where you can support one another, right? You can share each other's content, you can give each other recommendations for new products that they can use, or new different types of services that they can use that can benefit their business.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. One question I had, so like you're doing a lot of things like we spoke about: speaking, consulting, writing. And so how do you balance all that? Like, I love understanding that, because it's something that, you see it, you see a lot of YouTube videos and stuff like that of like big CEOs, and they get asked that question. But at your level, that you're starting out, and maybe you don't have the systems in place or all the employees doing all the administrative stuff for you. I think it's harder to balance things out early on. Later on, if you're being successful and you can hire, you have your accountant, you got your lawyer, they're all taking care of that administrative stuff, and you can do what you like. You can do your speaking, you can help clients. But at this stage of your career, and having gone through, everything you've gone through and worked 15 years in diversity and higher education and all that, how do you balance, like, personally, all your, it's tough. I mean,
It
yeah.
is. It's really tough. I'll say I don't do a great job at that. Because one thing that we didn't discuss is that I do work a full-time job too, right? And so, as a serial entrepreneur, I've had a business since 2009. I've always had a business, and have closed down successful businesses, started new ones, and this particular venture is it'll be 3 years in October. And so throughout those time frames, it's been a struggle, okay, if I'm being completely honest. And so what I would definitely share in terms of like how I balance things is I really prioritize health. And so I know it sounds counter intuitive. And a lot of times, even in my early days, I was like, I cannot, if I have like 2 hours or whatever, I want to pour that into my business. But I've kind of like reeled that back, because I feel like that hustle culture isn't good for any of us. And so,
Healthy, yeah. Sometimes
right?
it's unhealthy, yeah.
So
It's counterproductive.
it
Sometimes if
is.
you just keep working, then you crash. That happens to me all the time. I'll crash, and it's like I need to just lay down for a while because I can't. So it's like, if you take care of your health, it'll take care of your business.
Exactly. Totally. It took me a long time to learn that. So like getting a good night's rest, prioritizing like walking. Walking is really great for me. Like I really enjoy that. That centers me and it helps me to be more energized. And then that way, when I have those 2 hours to put into my business, I'm more focused. I'm quicker, because I just feel better, right? So I'll say that piece. The other thing is I have CEO dates. So for anyone out there who is thinking about entrepreneurship, I would definitely suggest doing CEO dates where you sit down with yourself and prioritize, okay, what are the things that are priorities for this week? And I do this at the beginning of the week. I do this at the beginning of the month, as well as the beginning of the quarter as well. And so through that, I am prioritizing, okay, there's that this is the other piece. I would have like these long lists of to-dos and they never get done. Like, and that irritated the heck out of me. And so it's like, okay, what are two main things that I need to do each day that's going to move the needle in my business, right? What money move can I make? What is something that is super scary that I've been putting off that can move the needle, whether it's in an area where it's attracting new folks, clients that will want me to speak, will want me to be their coach, or clients that, or people that I want to attract to my podcast or to buy my ebook, right? So like thinking through all of those kinds of things, thinking through my goals, what are the big goals? And then when things present themselves, having the courage to say no if it doesn't align with any of the things that I have in my business. And I think that's the biggest lesson too, in terms of not saying yes to everything. And sometimes when you start out as a business owner, you feel like you have to say yes because you're like, I'm trying to get out there. I want folks to understand my brand. I want to make sure that folks see me doing different things. But again, that leads to burnout quickly. And you're not any good in your business if you're burnout.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed is like there's some things that you can do that are very high value, high productivity that don't require a lot of time versus there's other things that you can kind of there's some paths you can take that you're kind of in a trench of like work for like hours and then you're like this didn't really do anything for me. So I think that planning, that CEO date is crucial. Like you have to kind of take a step back, figure out what is the high value stuff that I can do to move the needle forward. And then do those and focus on those 2-3 things. And that's one thing somebody told me in a manufacturing facility that I worked at. It's like, just focus on one thing a day. Like try to solve one problem a day. At the end of the year, you'll have solved, however many 300 problems and you'll be a superstar. But if you have that huge list and you try to you just jump around, then you don't really get anything done. So I think I've carried that with me through different, positions in different companies and even my own business. I just hit, okay, what's one thing I can accomplish today? And that's one thing, for example, I sit down and think like, okay, even if it's a small win, what are the wins for the day? Like, oh, that was a little win. That was a small win. That conversation was a win. So count your wins at the end of the day, because that'll keep you going forward. That'll give you that little dopamine rush that it's like, hey, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm moving forward, and you don't feel stuck. Because sometimes you're actually making progress, but in your head, you're like, no, it's not enough. It's not, we're not even, we're not going forward. And you're missing those little wins that really motivate you to keep going. Because it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint.
Not a sprint at all.
And with our, with nowadays with our 15-second TikToks and our quick dopamine hits, we don't really recognize, those sprints versus marathon opportunities. And I think that's crucial.
Yeah, you bring up a good point that I wanted to share too. Yeah, write down your wins. Like, we're so busy, we're checking things off, but like at the end of the day, I do that every day, actually. Like, what were some wins that I had today? And then I can go back on the days that are really tough, go back and read those and get re-energized, refocused, recommitted, with that whole piece. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So a lot of the people that I'm targeting with my podcast and everything I do is like, I work in the construction space. I'm an engineer. And so I want to provide a lot of value to engineers out there that are either starting their career, and a lot of them and you've worked with a lot of them through the years. And I think we can both give really good perspectives on a lot of things they can do to succeed. Even I'm sure you've worked with people that ended up working in construction a lot.
Yeah.
So like, what advice after all these years, if you can encompass right now and put like 2023 in a nutshell in the workspace, because like a lot of things I see is like companies are not as loyal as they used to be years ago. That's one so employees also don't become as loyal, and then that takes away from the motivation to do to be active in your job and try to like, you know, look for other positions. And so it's one thing I tell students is like, you know, stay flexible industry wise, because I've switched industries. I worked in automotive, that now I work in food and beverage, and I'm dabbling in pharmaceutical. But a lot of these engineering principles are the same across the board. So like you can implement them through different industries without having to focus on one. And so like what at this stage of your career, like what would you tell, you know, an engineer or like construction management student that's entering the workplace, and also with this whole AI thing going on, like how do you prepare for the roles that don't exist?
Yeah. Great question. I think the advice that I'll give the new person is kind of the advice that I give folks who are in the middle of their career too and feeling kind of stuck. And I would say, treat your career like an entrepreneurial venture, right? You are in charge of managing how folks feel about you, right? As a brand. And I would say when you're going into these companies, and you hit it right on the head, a lot of these companies are not loyal. We're hearing how many folks are being laid off from organizations who have really branded themselves as we're family, right? And it's like, well, is this how you treat family? And so you really need to think about yourself. You need to prioritize your brand. How is it? And what I mean by that is like, how is it that you want people to feel about you? How do you want them to feel when they interact with you or hear your name? What do you want to be known as? Your expertise, that sort of thing. These are things that you can be doing from day one. When you walk into that construction company, that construction site, think about the brand that you want to have for yourself, right? And then every day, do something towards increasing your, you know, your brand in that space, right? I think the other thing too is that's tied to this is your LinkedIn presence. There's a lot of folks who, because they have a job, they don't think that they have to do anything in terms of making sure that their LinkedIn is up to date, or if they have a website of their own that they want to put up. And so I would definitely say start thinking about that from now. Thinking 5 years from now, where do you want to be? And how can a personal brand and the efforts that you put out there help you to get to those levels? And not necessarily waiting until something happens, whether you're laid off or you start to hate your job to where you feel like you're going to put the energy that you want into having a LinkedIn presence, having your resume up to date, or having a positive brand with the folks that you're working with and folks that you are networking with outside of your company, which I would definitely say is a space that you want to make sure that you're putting a lot of energy towards expanding your network, expanding the amount of folks that you have as mentors or femtors, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, another layer to that is networking. I mean, honestly, it's one of the biggest things in my career and through my business. I've you know, it takes some honing. I mean, some people are better at networking than others, and they're social butterflies and that type of thing. And you know, engineers sometimes can be a little introverted, so that's kind of like they shy away from that. So yeah, definitely leverage the LinkedIn. But I mean, I didn't start going to conferences, engineering conferences, until my senior year at the university. I didn't know what they were. Nobody told me. I didn't really go into the career services office. I was just kind of went to class and went home. And once I started going to those, you know, to the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, you know, HENAC, all those conferences, my mind blew up. I mean, I was just like, okay, I got a credit card, I got a suit, you know, I made sure I looked okay. and also, that physical presence, that physical image is important,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a good transition, because you're coming from high school, you're going into college, and you're kind of finding that professional look, right?
Yeah.
And it could be a unique look. It doesn't have to be, the same as anybody. But it has to be a clean professional look that you're, I don't know the word, but like you're well,
Confident
yeah,
in,
you're
right?
confident. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're dressed to impress. That's what they use, right? So,
Yeah.
but networking has been huge. Societies and associations, even local associations that I visit and I'm a part of. I think that's one of the things that I tell students all the time. Get involved in associations. Every association, and even cities. Like, I work with the city of Hollywood here in
Mm-hmm.
Florida, and I'm in a few of the committees. There's always room for students in those committees, and you network with developers, with contractors, with consultants,
Mm-hmm.
and that could ultimately land you a great job. It could get, it looks great on resumes that you can balance, some volunteer work with networking, with a job, with whatever. So I think that's one thing I tell students all the time. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
would totally agree with that too. And I think too, like folks can take advantage of those, right? So like say they go and they start to attend association meetings, or maybe they go to like the city of Hollywood, whatever, and start interacting with folks. That's where I would say a lot of folks are super eager to be open to students. So take advantage of that student label, right? And that status where you can pick people's brains and they are very open to that. You can have coffee, you can set up, coffee meetings and do informational interviews, which is where you sit down with
huge.
folks and just
That's
ask them about their careers, right? You're either using that time to try and learn about a particular career path, or you're using it to learn about a particular organization.
Oh
And
yeah,
so totally use that.
the info sessions. Oh my gosh, it was crucial in one of my previous the companies I worked with, because sometimes you if you don't pick your path in a company or in your career or in your business, someone else will pick it for you.
Yeah.
They will shape what way your business is going to go or which way your career is going to go. But
Hmm.
doing those info sessions with people that, hey, I'm interested in this department, I want to learn what they do day to day, or like, how do I get in? It's as simple as walking over to their desk and say, hey, this is me. Nice to meet you. Would you like to have some coffee with me? I'd love to like learn what you do. People
Hmm.
love talking about what they do. People
Yep.
love talking about themselves. It's human nature, and you have to leverage that, because you're not taking, anything from them. They're just, a lot of times they will tell you, hey, I'm too busy, or whatnot. But I don't think that should be discouraging. You should just try to find someone else that does have the time, that does have the I guess motivation to try to talk to you. So
Hmm.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I want to touch on is you talk about traveling a lot. Yeah. So I saw that you travel a lot. I also travel a lot. I was in Europe a couple of weeks ago. I spent 10 days over there in Amsterdam and London and Belgium.
Nice.
How do you see traveling as kind of, yeah, like how do you encompass traveling into what you do, into your life, into your career? Is it just an escape? Is it just an escape vehicle to try to just get your mind off everything, or do you use it for a specific purpose, and like, to develop like a project, or to write a book, or to take pictures? Like, how do you travel?
That's a great question too. I love these, Maheen. So I think to answer this, I have to go back a little bit. Like I said, I'm a serial entrepreneur, right? And so have had several businesses, more than several. One of them was being a travel blogger. And so that's kind of how that started. And I started that in 2016, kind of to have an outlet, a creative outlet, when I started my doctoral program. So I was working really hard full time while going to school for my doctorate. And I used travel to kind of like have something else that has nothing to do with work and schoolwork. And so I started to travel and share that out in the world. And really, I use travel as a way to kind of celebrate my wins. You know how we talked about, right? Celebrating wins. So that's really been a focus of mine, and one that I really encourage my clients to do as well, and grad students in general, because it's a grueling process. You need to find a way to stay motivated, but then another way to celebrate those milestones that you have throughout. So I would plan a big trip at the end of every semester to kind of be like, oh my gosh, I survived another semester.
Yeah.
Yay. You know, let's keep going. And so I did that for a while. And like I said, it was to really celebrate my wins. But then I also enjoy meeting other people from different cultures. Like I said, my parents are from, well, I don't even know if I said it, but they're from Haiti, which is in the Caribbean. And so I prioritize really traveling to the Caribbean. I really have a goal of visiting every Caribbean island. That's really me. And then, because of me and my DEI like lens too, I really prioritize Black and Brown countries. So I've never been to England actually, or Europe in general. Eventually I'll make it there, but I'm prioritizing these other spaces. And so when I do travel, it just really helps me to reconnect with myself. And so I definitely encourage folks to do that as well. I reflect, I kind of take time. I wouldn't be like the career person that I am, or the career strategist, if I didn't spend time really reflecting on where am I personally, professionally, where do I want to go? What are, I do a lot of energy work too. So like, how am I feeling? Where am I feeling kind of like stuck? And what are things that I can do to kind of like unblock that? And so traveling helps me to do that. It also, like I said, helps me to connect with diverse folks, which also influences the work that I do, right? In
Right.
general, it helps me to have a better human connection with others. It helps me to connect on a human level, but also helps me to just, you know, kind of show up better for myself, as well as having like a reset.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, no, like one thing for me, for example, is I usually try to pick a place that's far away. Like I've been to Thailand, I've been to Morocco,
Nice.
I've been to Peru, and so if you even like in Europe, you know, that I don't speak the language. If I just went to Holland, and I don't speak
Mhm.
Dutch, but
Yeah.
everybody speaks English, obviously. But it's for me a lot of times it's like building trust in myself that I can figure things out. I think
Hmm.
traveling has a lot of that, and because when you're somewhere else that you're unfamiliar with the culture, you're unfamiliar with the language, you're unfamiliar with just the geography in general. I mean, yeah, of course you can go to like a big resort, just stay there the whole time, and that's it. But if you actually get out and explore like local neighborhoods, and you get a
Hmm.
car and drive, or even a bicycle, you start having to, like, your senses get more aware of like what's going on, where am I, how do I communicate,
Yeah.
you know, and that for me, every time I travel, I get back home, I'm like, okay, I think I trust myself a little bit more, that all these little things that I deal with on a daily basis, you know, administrative things, or issues with clients, issues with whatever it might be, I can figure it out, because I,
Exactly.
you know, it just that it's an innate sense that, you know, I survived, you know, going to, I don't know, for example, I went to the Sahara Desert in Morocco, and
Uh-huh.
we took camels into the desert, and we slept in the middle of the desert. So it's like
Nice.
I went there and came back. So this is not bad. I can
Yeah,
deal with
yeah.
it, you
And
know?
you're forever changed too, right? So
Yeah.
that's cool. I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so anything else that you would like to share? I have a bunch of questions here. We can tackle them.
I
I think
can't
we've
think
touched
of
on a lot of the good stuff with, you know, helping students, diversity, travel. Um, do you do any type of community work? It's like volunteering and stuff like that. Do you work with any associations, um, or
Yeah. I have. So in my role, I've worked in different associations. I've been on boards as well to help move the organization forward. And so I do, I'm sorry, I'm thinking. Yeah, so that's kind of been the extent. And then some of the volunteering that I do some presentations and talks for free, right? To just give back. I do believe in that. I do that like a number of times per year. And, you know, there are other times where I do have to charge, but I do believe in, you know, earmarking a few speaking opportunities, workshops, even clients, and that sort of thing, kind of earmarking a number of those to just do kind of pro bono. I don't even know if that's a
Yeah,
term that you use outside of legal, but
right, right.
without a cost.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm curious to know what how you see your business and your brand growing, because obviously you have these speaking events, consulting. Like, what's the next stage? Like, how do you see, you know, Dr. Emmanuela consulting in 5 years? Is it more books and bestsellers? Is it more like larger speaking events and, you know, speaking in front of thousands of people? What kind of, what's your vision?
Yes, I agree with all of those. Yes, I'm not going to limit myself. I believe the sky is the limit for Dr. Emmanuela Consulting. Like I said, I'm in the space where I'm expanding. I have a virtual assistant. I'm hoping within 5 years, I really do have a goal of like I said, it's time to travel. I have a goal of seeing every Caribbean island, and hopefully, maybe I'm a digital nomad where I'm working in different settings and moving around. I would also love, especially which is tied to, you know, some of my research, doing research related to Caribbean populations. So that is definitely something on the horizon. More books as well, kind of tied to some of the work that I'm doing with the podcast, Writing on My Mind, which I didn't mention before. And probably being independent. I really see that for myself, and wanting my business to be my main focus. And so 5 years from now, I think that is really the direction that I want to grow in, growing the amount of folks that I have on my team, growing the brand, more research, more books, larger stages, definitely all on the horizon.
I think that you're well on the way to making that happen. Your branding is on point. Your
Thanks.
communication, just like, that's one thing that, and I can speak, like, I'm completely honest. The reason I reached out again is because you made an impact on me, and how amazing you were to work with, and how, what a good vibe it was to just like work with you and plan things. So I know that if I felt that, everyone else that works with you feels that way, and
Aw,
it's just gonna compound for forever, and you're gonna accomplish all that. So
thank you
I
so
I'm
much.
so happy we got to talk. I'm so happy we got to reconnect. Let's keep it going, however that might be, and
Yes.
you know, whichever way I can contribute to what you're doing, and vice versa. Where I'm going to include you in as many things as I can. And again, it was a pleasure to be with you today and to speak with you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for opening up the morning to speak with me, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thanks so much for having me, Maheen. And yeah, totally excited to collaborate in the future. And this has been such a great conversation.
Awesome. All right. Thank
Congrats
you,
on
Noel.
everything.
Take care.
Thanks.